Welcome to the Astro Imaging channel on a Sunday night after a new moon weekend, when people have just barely gotten back from their star parties taking beautiful images, I hope. We've got lots to do, and so we're going to kind of move along through it today. I hope everybody is having a good time. I'm starting my screen, and the first place I want to go is to the calendar. We have some changes coming up. Tonight we're doing Eric's California data in a workshop that Rory has put together for us. And we've got, I think, 6 people here to show you how they processed the California Nebula data. Next week, we're going to have Detlef and Eric tell us about their solar telescope that they've made. But it looks like we can't do that. We got to change our schedule. So Tim Hutchinson, I believe, is going to be doing some stuff about getting good RGB color out of an SHO image. Adam's coming the week after that. We're always excited when Adam's here. Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of people coming up in the near future, but we always need more. So as you know, I always like it when you guys hit the contact button, tell us who you are, and tell us that you want to present. We need your help doing that. But tonight we're going to be doing a workshop. And for those of you who don't know what workshops are, it's a different experience, because instead of bringing one person to talk about a certain skill in astroimaging or something, we're inviting all of you to go over and find some data. Right now it's California Nebula data, and it's still there. You can still get your zip file and process it yourself and see how you compare to these guys. Then you submit it to us, Rory reviews them and talks to a few people and talks them into coming to the show. And that's what you're going to be seeing tonight. We've done it before, and all that data is still out there. The shows are still out there, and you can see how it works. Actually, you can just stay here and you're going to see how it works, because we're going to be doing it. And rather than go into a whole lot more, we need the time tonight, so I'm just going to let Rory take over. Rory, you're on, dude. Go for it.
Real quick, Terry, there's a very slight echo, like a second sound stream that's like a couple milliseconds behind the main one. It's not terrible, but it's a thing if you want to look at that while we're going.
And everybody in the room, be sure you're muted unless you're actually going to be talking, okay? Thank you. Oh, Rory, you're on.
All right. Thanks for everyone for coming tonight. We got quite a lot of presenters, so I'm going to get right into it. Eric, thank you very much for sharing your data of California Nebula with us. We had some excellent data, and usually I plan about 4 to 6 presenters to come, thinking a couple of them will not make it, but everyone made it for tonight. So we're going to jump right in, and our first presenter is going to be Jon Greif. So thanks for joining us tonight, John. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Give me 1 second.
And the audio is fixed, so thank you, Terry.
Okay, I think I'm starting to share. And can you see my screen?
Yep. You go ahead and start presenting.
Excellent. I really want to thank Eric for this data. I live in Southern California, just outside of downtown San Diego. So when I image from my deck, it's Bortle 6 to 8. And I just love when I can get hold of good data. And Eric's data is just absolutely the best. So this was the image I submitted. And Rory was kind enough to select it. And I thank you, Rory. And I'll get right to it. I'm going to go through my workflow. Rory asked me to keep it under 5 minutes, so it'll be pretty quick, but if there are questions, don't hesitate to ask. The data was completely processed in PixInsight, the current version, on a MacBook Pro, and of course, the first thing I did is open Eric's zip files and import them into PI. I chose to only use the red, green, and blue data because that's what I generally do. And I use the channel combination tool to create a single RGB image, which looks something like the image on the top right. And I don't know if you can see my arrow or not, but I'll keep using it. I then used dynamic background extraction to remove what gradient there was. There was very little gradient. That's the bottom left. And then I used photometric color calibration to arrive at the quote unquote real colors. And because Eric included his FITS data, that was easy. PixInsight immediately picked up on it and gave me a very nice image. The next thing I did is some noise reduction and sharpening with the new Noise X Exterminator. I really like this tool. I used to use the median transfer program, but this has just made it a one-step process. The settings that I used on this were noise reduction at 0.9, detail at 0.45. I used several preview screens to arrive at that number, and because it's still linear data, I checked the linear box. Oh, I think you're hearing my audio. I'll keep going though. For stretching, I've been using generalized hyperbolic stretch ever since I saw the Astro Imaging Channel program by David Payne and Mike Granfield a few weeks ago. I am really just enthralled with this program. It gives you so much flexibility and allows you to do so many different things. What I did here is I did a screen capture of the stretched image of the California Nebula with the settings. I doubt that you can read all the settings, but if you've watched David and Mike's video, and I might add that Paul, who's on the program, I believe, has a great video, several great videos on hyperbolic stretch. So let's keep going. Next, I separated the stars from the image using Star X Terminator. Sometimes I use StarNet 2. Sometimes I use them both and pick the one that worked the best. Alex, I saw your question in Cloudy Nights this weekend, and I might have an answer. Ron Breacher told us with our one of our PixInsight sessions that those star separation programs work best on nonlinear data, and I think he's right, and I'll just leave it at that. That on the left, of course, is the nebulosity, and on the right is the star mask. And I used a range mask to protect the background while I worked on the nebula with HDR multi-scale transform and local histogram equalization. This brought out the dynamic range of the nebula and sharpened the image nicely, brought out a lot of nice detail. Then I used a second range mask to protect the nebula and the centers of the large stars while I smoothed out the background with curves transformation and clone stamp. I touched up the colors of the nebula and the stars with the hue and saturation tools in curves transformation, and I applied again Noise Exterminator to each of the separated images one more time, this time with the linear box unchecked. Finally, I used unsharp mask to bring out a little more detail and dark structure enhance to subtly enhance the dark areas on the nebula image, and then I thinned the stars number and size with morphologic transformation. And finally, I used pixel math to put the stars and nebula back together. And on the left in this slide, you see my pixel math formula, and it's really nothing more than addition. The nebula image plus the star image, and I wanted to be sure and rescale the result and create a new image, and that's the final image on the right. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to present this image, and for the data, Eric, and for the wonderful program you guys put on every weekend. And with that, I will stop sharing.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate your share tonight. It was cool to be exposed to the star exterminator and the noise exterminator and the general hyperbolic stretch. And although we're not really diving deep into those processes, it's cool to kind of get a brief overview of how they work. And I really appreciate you presenting tonight. So thank you. Next to present is Alex Woronow, and he has some very interesting images. And he was anxious to share his workflow and excited to share his workflow tonight about it's kind of a scientific approach to mix narrowband data with LRGB, I believe, if I got that right. So thanks for sharing tonight, Alex, and I'll let you take over.
Thank you. Hold on a second as we get the screen up. Okay, you should be seeing a PixInsight screen. First of all, I'd like to say I have a widescreen monitor, and apparently things are not going to come through as sharp as I had hoped. But I have another monitor on order as a second monitor, so maybe if I ever get to present again, it'll be a little better. I'm going to have to read a lot of what I've done here. But anyway, I took the data and I used the RGB HSO data to process, but I, in fact, threw out the S and the O and only used the H. And I have a script I wrote called, first of all, a lot of my processing, my pre-processing, follows pretty much what everybody else does. I guess the only difference in my workflow is I've written a program that allows me to weight the data and to visualize the data better before I combine them into the stacks. But other than that, matter of fact, I can show you that screen real fast. I don't know how well this comes through, but what it is you can select a set of variables up here that you can use to weight your data. And these are the weights you assign to them. And then you can manipulate stretching these curves or doing whatever. And as you go through it, you get a chance here to see which data are rejected and which data are allowed as you go through. Now, we didn't have subframes in this one, so obviously I didn't use that, but that's part of my basic workflow, is to get rid of any images that might have problems with them. Okay, and the next thing I did is, after I got all these stacks in here and the way I wanted them, I ran another program I wrote called Narrowband Assistant. And Narrowband Assistant takes your RGB, and in this case I only put in the SH, and it separates the emission line from any of these narrowband images you put in here from the broadband images, and it does that by solving 2, or in some cases 3, simultaneous equations. And it's a PixInsight script. By the way, anything you see here that you want, you can contact me through AstroBin, Alex Woronow, W-O-R-O-N-O-W, and I'd be glad to share them with you. And most of them have write-ups on how they work, so it could be a new experience if you're a PixInsight user. Ultimately, when you run this program, which I'll just go ahead and do right now, it starts separating and it gets some intermediate images, and it actually does a combined images at the end. It'll do an SHO image. Whoops, it looks like it got an error. Great. This is the H line, for instance, that came out, and this is, I need to stretch that damn thing. Well, anyhow, this is the RGB image. I've got my screen so collapsed here to down from its full width that I can't see all my controls, but anyhow, we'll go on with that. But the point is, this is now a hydrogen image of just the emission line with a continuum subtracted from it. Maybe someday I'll get to give a talk on that. So I run that H line through a program called Studio 2 by Topaz, and this is the H emission line, and I'm going to in just a little bit show you some of the inner workings of Topaz if I have time. This is the H image, the RGB image with the stars removed. I used StarNet 2, which is usually better than the other one. And I ran that one through Topaz, and I get this. And I did some color adjustments also in Topaz, and then a program called 3D LUT Creator. And I ended up with that. Then I restarted the images. I transferred this. I wrote a script which transfers the images from the from one image to another. So I make a RGB color calibrated image with the stars in it, and then I'm going to transfer those into the other image that I have, the star source image, a transfer mask, and the target image that I want to use. And so they're all set up here, and you just hit run, and hopefully you end up with an image that has stars in it. An advantage of doing it this way is if you just simply use arithmetic and add the stars back, the stars have the wrong color because you took them out of an image that wasn't fully processed. When you process them, you change the colors, the brightnesses, and everything else of your nebula. And if you add the stars back, it's not the same as the ones that were subtracted out at the beginning. So this one avoids that problem when you get the stars back in with the right details. I think I'm about out of time. Is that right? Or I can show you Topaz if you are interested. This is the Topaz that I use to get the images with all the extra nebulosity that's around them that you don't normally see. There's a clear button, which is very handy, and I don't have time to discuss that, and dehaze. Those two together do a tremendous job of bringing out the detail. Then there are a lot of other things like precision contrast and detail, precision detail, which work on different orders of magnitude of size of the things, of the features. I think I'll leave it at that since I'm sure I'm over time by now. So
Alex,
yeah.
did you use the Topaz Sharpen AI, or is this?
Yeah, down here at the bottom are the ones I used. I used Topaz denoise, which is a little better than the noise exterminator, and I actually use it more than once in the process. Then I use Sharpen AI. These are artificial intelligence programs. And then finally at the end, I open up the Adjust AI, and if I can get something out of that, fine. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Why don't we discuss this after the show?
Okay. So I'll stop sharing now. There we go.
All right. Thank you, Alex, for that. That was
Rory, before we continue, if you're not presenting, can you, besides muting yourself, turn off your video and save a little bandwidth?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Again, thanks, Alex, for presenting that. Super interesting workflow, and interested to find out more about that in the future. Next up, we have Paul Hancock.
All right. Hey, guys. Wow, a lot to live up to after those two presentations. Great work, guys. I'll share my screen. Where's the button gone? There it is. Entire screen. Perfect. So my work was pretty similar to the setup for John, the way he went through things, but I'll go through it. My difference, of course, is I've been working with narrowband rather than the RGB that John was working on. So I took Eric's fantastic data and concentrated mostly on the narrowband, the HA, the O3, and the S2. And very similar to John, if I look at my history states, I went through and did some GHS, oops, wrong one, some GHS stretching on my image as John did, and then used StarNet 2 to remove the stars for my HA. And I did the same idea with my O3 or Eric's O3 layer and his S2 layer to get these same kind of images he did, but with HA, S2 and O3. And then I tried to play around with them and try and get the backgrounds to roughly the same levels and the nebulosity to roughly the same brightness as well. So that was just a fair bit of playing around with GHS, as you guys had on your channel recently with David and Mike. So that fantastic bit of stretching software. I did do a little bit of a play around with using some clone stamping, which I don't normally do, to try and remove some of the star artifacts in the background. Normally I just leave them in, and I'm not sure how successful I was. I can, looking at it now a few weeks later, I can see there's a bit of an artifact up here, but you live and learn. So that was most of the pre-processing I did. And then what I like to do at the moment, it's fairly standard for my processing, is to use the 4-ax palette. And in the 4-ax palette, the way it works is rather than just combining via SHO or HOO in the channels in fixed amounts, what you do is you use the actual data to decide on the blend between those two, between HOO and SHO. And the way you decide on that is to actually take your O data and do a bit of contrast boosting and so on it. And you can see all the residual stars that I left in the background. For this one, I didn't bother clone stamping these ones out. And the idea is it's going to look at this image, which is quite noisy, but it's just using it for the chrominance channel. So that's not a huge issue. And it's looking at the brightest parts of this image, and that's where it's going to mostly put SHO, and the darker regions is where it's going to try and put HOO, and then in between it'll do a mixture of the two. And the other piece of information you need is, so I've called that O because that's just the O channel. This is the interesting one. This is the I call it the HO data, and the idea here is it's multiplicative. So it's taking not just the brightest parts of the O image, it's taking the brightest parts of the hydrogen and the oxygen together. And you can see it's quite dark as standard. So I think when most people use the 4-ax palette, when I've seen people using it in the past, they're a bit disappointed because it tends to come out looking just like HOO. I'll talk a little bit more about, I can see in the comments a little bit more about 4-ax in a second. I'll talk a little bit more about it and show you where it is in a moment so that you can see it yourself. But the idea is this image is quite dark at the moment. So when I do my combinations, I'm not just doing a straight SHO. What I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the SH and O data as what's called a dynamic expression. So if I bring this up, I don't know how clear that is at the moment, but you can see the expressions that I've used here for my RG and B channel. So what I've done is I've said, for my red channel, I'm going to do that O image times S2. So where that O image that I had was really bright, it's going to mostly take S. And where it's not bright, it's going to take HA. And then in the green channel, it's going to take that HO image that I just showed you and put mostly HA. And where it's not bright, it's going to put mostly O3. And then the blue channel is just straight O3. The problem with that at the default, as I said, this HO image is quite dark. So it's mostly in the green channel, it's mostly going to take oxygen, and it just comes out looking like a HOO image, a stock standard HOO image. Whereas if I take some time on this HOO image and I brighten it up, so let's see if I can find that. I brighten that image up quite considerably. Again, it's quite noisy, but I'm just going to be using this for chrominance. Once it's bright like that, when I do my combination, it comes out looking very different. It comes out looking much more unique to, say, just a straight SHO or a HOO image. Let's see if I can find that. 4x. There we go. This is what it comes out looking like stock standard with Eric's fantastic data. You can see it's a lot more red and orange than standard SHO, and it's a lot more blue-green than a standard HOO image. So it kind of takes the best of both worlds when you set up those dynamic expressions carefully. So let's see if I can. I'll bring up the pixel math a little bit so you can hopefully see it a little bit more clearly. Where's my 4x? Is this the expression here? So hopefully that it's a little bit larger here. So as I said, the idea is that it's taking those images that I actually created as data for combining SHO and HO together, rather than just a fixed combination of the two. So it's using your real data to come up with an interesting and unique palette. And then once I'd done that, I just go through my usual curves and saturation to make the image look a little bit prettier. And I used Eric's RGB stars to put them back in. I wish I'd had that script of Alex's though, because you can see the stars, as he said, the stars don't quite fit once you've done this all this processing, because the colors don't perfectly match. So that's going to be an interesting script to look into, I think. And then I've gone through and done my LRGB combination. I took my HA data and did some local histogram combinations as Jon did in his. So you can see that as I go through that, it starts boosting that contrast a little bit. Did some noise exterminator just like Jon did, and then put the stars back in. So it turned it into a nice luminance, and this is quite clean now. So when I combine that with the 4x chrominance data, it comes out looking a lot cleaner and not quite so noisy. And so here's the final image. And that was the gist of it. So I'll stop presenting now.
Paul, could you hold on 1 second for me?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
Would you make that image, would you rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise?
I can. Geometry, 9 degrees. That gone counter?
The other way.
Other way.
No, counterclockwise.
How's that?
Fill the screen.
Yep.
Okay, it's the California Nebula. Now it looks like California.
Yeah, see, from Sydney, I wouldn't have had a clue what
Well,
California
no,
looked like.
And
that's
speaking
right.
for speaking for somebody who lives in California, my head is spinning. We did have a question from John at Astro, I think. He asked which palette, and I'm not sure that it's just a simple answer.
Well, it isn't, but how about, hold on a second. Let's see if I can get this up. I'll send you to the guy that actually created it. I'll put it up on the screen so that they can investigate for themselves. So the guy that did it, I think his username is 4x. That's why I just keep calling it the 4x palette. But his website is The Coldest Nights. And he did a really fantastic blog post here on dynamic narrowband combinations, and probably does a much better explanation than I did on it here. Although I do have a YouTube video where I go through it in probably more like 20 minutes. So it's there's a lot more in that, hopefully. But if you follow through his blog post here, he puts the expressions at the bottom of his page here, so you can straight out grab them. But as I said, the idea is it's using your real data to mix SHO and HOO together to kind of get the best of both worlds. Of course, that's personal preference, I guess. Yeah, so yeah, the coldest nights is where you can jump in to have a look at that.
Well,
John.
I think it's very interesting because it is kind of like a Hubble palette going from the kind of burnt orange through green into blue. So it's an interesting representation of the data.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to plug Paul's YouTube channel for a couple of wonderful sessions on GHS if anyone wants to learn more GHS.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thanks, Paul,
I'll jump out
sharing.
now. That's all right. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a really cool image. One more time, what was the name of that workflow?
The 4X palette.
Yeah, the 4X. That's cool. I got to check that out, man. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you for presenting. Really appreciate you. Next up, we have Warwick Anderson.
Hello, everybody. Very excited to be with you tonight, and congratulations to the Astro Imaging channel for all the work you do. Right, how's that?
You're looking good, dude.
All right, terrific. So look, just a little bit about myself before I get into the data. So I'm in Canberra, which is down the southeast corner of Australia here. And one of the issues we've been having is that the Pacific Ocean climate system, which has been causing drought on the west coast of the United States and draining Lake Mead, has been dropping record rain and cloud on top of us, which has literally limited our imaging opportunities. And true story, Friday night, I was driving out to a dark location and the last section is on dirt and I got bogged and had to get towed out the following morning. So anyway, so look, I started off with a 3-inch Tasco. Then with my father and uncle, we built a 6-inch Newtonian. My uncle was a plumber, so the mount was built out of old plumbing parts. And then the busyness of life, the limitations of the equipment crowded. And then in 2019, I was visiting my friend. He pulled out his telescope and got to see Saturn and Jupiter close to opposition. And that really reignited my interest. And one of the things that really jumped out at me as I started looking at buying a telescope was just how much technology had progressed over the last 40 years. So I pulled out one of my old astronomy books. This is Contemporary Astronomy from 1975. It's got a couple of images in there from the 48-inch Smith on Mount Palomar. Here's one of those images. And here's my image. This is taken with a 3-inch refractor, maximum elevation 13 degrees above the horizon. Just amazing that capabilities only available to professional astronomers at many millions of dollars, now available to someone like me. So why am I using AstroPixel processor when everybody else is using PixInsight? When I was looking to purchase a set of equipment. And it's a really daunting, there's a huge range of material out there. And I settled on these 4 objectives to help me narrow. And the second objective there, ease of use, was one of my really high priorities. And so in setting up my gear, you can see how that objective has influenced my choices. In particular, my ASI Air. Cannot say enough about how good this gadget is. It makes astrophotography feel like cheating. It's just so simple to use. So when I was looking at processing software, the thing that really attracted me to APP was this, and this is the top left-hand corner, and a numbered sequence of steps to stack your image. And for somebody who knows nothing about processing images, this was super attractive. And look, as it turns out, you really only need steps 1 and step 6, and all of the usual presets work just fine. So moving on to Eric's data, this is the screen that you get when you open up APP. You've got stacking over here on the left-hand side. You've got a tools tab, and I'll show you this a bit later on. Down the bottom here is where your files go in, your image goes in the center, and then over here on the right-hand side, you've got some basic stretch and image processing. So here I am, I'm in the tabs, the tools tab. I've loaded up Eric's data, and I'm just about to go to combine RGB. And so what I've done here is I've already brought in hydrogen, red, green. I'm just about to load blue. I'm using a preset, which is hydrogen, red, green, blue. Hit calculate, and this is what you get. Now, normally in APP, if you're stacking, it will take the green tinge out. But look, this is easy to handle in APP. Move on to the remove light pollution tab. And the way this works, just put some green boxes around the periphery of the image, trying to avoid the nebulosity in the center. Hit calculate, and it automatically takes out the green tinge. Now, the color is not quite right here. So my next tool I'm using is the calibrate star colors. So the way this works, again, you select a bunch of stars, avoiding the nebulosity. APP inside it has a model for what star colors are supposed to look like. And it will then adjust the color balance in the image to give you those star colors. So again, hit calculate, and this is what you get. And you can see I've got a pretty good fit to the star color. Next thing I've done is there's a reasonably new feature in APP, star reduction. And so what I'm trying to do here is just tame the stars a little bit. So over here, I've reduced the star size and intensity. It's probably a bit hard to see on the video, but if you look up here in the top left-hand corner, if I go backwards and forwards between the images, you can see it's just taking a little bit of the intensity out of the stars. Final thing, I'm now over here on the right-hand side. I've selected one of the preset stretches. I've adjusted the black point a little. I've turned on saturation, and I've added a little bit of contrast here. And it's come out a really intense image. When I've been working in APP, one of the issues is that it doesn't have a noise reduction. And so this is an image I took last Christmas of Comet Leonard. It's 21 60-second images. There's noise everywhere. You can see it in the background, in the tail. I wanted to try and take out some of that noise. So I tried out Topaz, and you can see here it's done a great job cleaning up the background and also protecting the integrity of the tail. And so moving on to Eric's data, it is a really good data set. There's not much noise in here. I've had to zoom in a long way to find it. what I'm doing here is I've got a split screen. On the left is without noise reduction. On the right hand, I've reduced the noise. And this is the final image. Just a couple of final thoughts on Astro pixel processors. There's some really good features about it. I can get a final image in less than 30 minutes. It might not be the same quality or the same sophistication of others, but I can get a decent image. And in particular, APP has a really good mosaic capability. They're not so good, there's no manual. Charles Bracken has done a quick start guide. I see that you've got Charles booked in for October, and I'll be really interested to see his presentation. There's no noise reduction. The star reducer has a little way to go, and I haven't yet been able to get the narrow combinations to work. You've got to adjust sliders, and that is really cumbersome to work with. So just finishing up, I went back to the last workshop. This is Terry's tarantula data. Same process. This is what I ended up with. And look, just a couple of my own images to finish with. This is my final image of Comet Leonard. This is a mosaic of Antares in the Ro-Okeechobee area. It's 1:3, and a really interesting feature here is you just cannot see the boundaries between the three images. APP has done a really good job of blending them. And then no presentation from the Southern Hemisphere would be complete without an image of the Great Carina Nebula. Thank you very much, and thanks to the Astro Imaging channel for inviting me.
All right, thank you, Warwick. That was a beautiful image of Comet Leonard at the end there. And great job presenting Eric's data. One of the coolest parts about this data is there's so many panels and palettes to choose from. There's so many color options, so everyone had a slightly different image, which makes for a great conversation. Next to present, we have Jacques Deacon. Thanks for joining us tonight, Jacques.
Is my screen coming through okay?
Yes, now it is. And
Thank
there's
you.
Mixed Insight, just fine.
100%. Thank you very much for having me again. It's fantastic to present my interpretation of this fantastic data that Eric provided. Me also being in the southern skies, the California Nebula is something that I always wanted to image, but unfortunately it is a bit low in our skies, and I will never be in a scenario to generate such a nice clean data set like this. So thank you so much for sharing the data, Eric. So I'm also not going to dive too much into all the details of the processing. I just want to show you a bit how to work, and it was a very interesting experience working with somebody else's data as well. You know, I think we are also accustomed to our own data sets and our own challenges, that it was really interesting working with somebody else's data. So just looking quickly at the data sets, absolutely fantastic. The quality, the HA, the detail in the HA was absolutely fantastic. 03 also, not so much detail in there, but we can see in which area of the image are the HO or the 03 gonna feature. And then sulfur showed some great details. Maybe a bit noisy, as we all know sulfur usually is, but very nice details hidden in here. So with that in mind, and after you evaluating the data like this, now one has to take the decision of what direction you want to take with your image. And what I then do is I go to Astro and just look at other people's interpretations of the data, and it's so nice, like we saw tonight, just all the different interpretations that you can get. So here ordered from left to right is more natural palettes, maybe some HA LRGB combinations. Then we move more into the HOOs maybe, and we can see where the different channels then feature. Love these golden and blue ones, but what's really unique for me was these that really show the different channels, the sulfur regions here in a more red orange, then the greens of the strong hydrogen comes in, and then you have the blue here. So that's really the direction that I wanted to take with this. So next then, I just did a quick combine of the challenge of the channels in a SHO palette. You can see there in all the magenta star glory there. That's just to keep in mind how our data sits. And then what I do is I stripped out the stars, stretched it as well. Just maybe I can quickly show you typically what I did with the images. This is a very nice feature in PixInsight. I'm using more and more of it, saving your project out, and then you have access to all of the steps, and you can go through. So typically did a bit of noise noise reduction, stripped out the stars. These scripts are actually also the GHS script here. That process really took over for me. All my stretching now, it's so powerful, really brings out all the nice details, and I like to then boost local contrast a bit with local histogram. So how I do it is, as you can see on my side here, I have these ones. I always like to mix my channels a bit, so I don't just do like that first one that I showed. That's just a starting point, and then I like to, for my SHO, I like to use the S and a little bit of the hydrogen, the green. I will use the hydrogen and a bit of oxygen in there. And then even in the O3 in the blue channel, I will even put in a little bit of HA in there, just because the signal is sometimes not as strong as your other signals. And then these constants, I then do a whole heap of them, iterating, trying different values for my constants. So for this image, this combination, I used the constants in here. So the S was 0.8 and hydrogen 0.2 here, 0.8 and 2 for these two. And I had to boost the hydrogen a little bit more in the blue because it was not as strong a signal. So I really liked this result where this was, but unfortunately StarNet left a few remnants here of the stars, and I didn't want to deal with them in the color image. So what I just did is I just took these images out quickly into Photoshop, and I just cleaned them up a bit there. It's just a bit easier with clone stamp and spot healing there than trying to do it in PixInsight. So I then combined these three into this palette, and that looked much better, much smoother. I don't have too many artifacts to deal with later in the process. So then from here, again, we go to the process history. Very, very useful. I like this orientation, so that was one of the first thing I did, and then it was really just curves. You can see here I utilized a lot of color masks. So you can use that color mask script to generate some really good color masks to work on the different colors in the image, and you can see here how the image is. So here you can see I worked on the reds a bit, on the yellows. This was probably just a lightness mask or something. Worked a bit on the blues. Again, some of the yellows. And this is all just curves. At this stage, we just want to get our colors nice and strong and nice and vibrant. As you can see, stepping through here, the final one there. Then I did a very strong, you can see here, 0.9 noise exterminator. This is our color component, so it doesn't have to have too much details. And then here, I incorporated a luminosity into a LRGB combination here. I'll show you my my luminance just now, but that really just brought back all of those details there. And then after that, I did just a little bit of noise exterminator. Noise exterminator is so flexible. You see, not so strong, 0.4 after it. I left a bit of noise. I'll show you now in my luminosity. So my luminosity was just the HA data, boosted with some local histogram transformations, and just trying to get all the contrast out that I could in the image. And as you can see, I left a bit of noise there. I also used also passed it back and forwards a bit between PixInsight and Photoshop, and also ran a little bit of the topaz denoise in there too, but actually more to get some of the details out. So with our image in this state, then what I usually then do for the final work, I then go to Photoshop again with this. Again, it's just a bit easier to do more selective adjustments in this stage. As you can see, there was our starting. So beautiful image, but I wanted to change a few things, like especially that bottom right corner. I didn't like that too much. You can see I selected that out and worked a bit on that just by color balance and use saturation there, just to get that a bit more in line. Then I work myself up into the image, you see, with more selections. That the same thing, just color balances and hue and saturation, just to get the palette like I wanted to. This one was interesting. I felt those high regions were maybe because the luminosity was so strong, maybe they were a bit washed out. So you can see there, just brought some color back there in there. Then after at this stage, I was happy, and it was just some global, a little bit of vibrance, again a little bit of global color balance, use saturation, just again to get it nice and vibrant and bright. And then what I like to do is always on the final stages of my image, I do a little trick. I don't know if anybody uses that. I call it just a local contrast boost. So when I'm going to show you this layer, this LC layer, I just threw it out here. So that is what you do is you just go and you create a new layer in your project, and what you do is you set it to soft light and you fill it with 50% gray. So that will look like that. Sorry, let me just see. I don't think it's gonna do this now, but don't worry. So, and then what I then do is I use one of these little drawing tablets. This is an old Wacom drilling drawing tablet. And I go into my image and I just try to lift out some of the contrast with a very soft and a low opacity brush, and just bring out some of the contrast very locally and very selectively, just to give that image that final little pop. I don't even think this is going to show in over the YouTube compression, but you can see there's a little bit if I just go backwards and forwards with that. So that just give you that image just a little bit more of a 3D effect, and just make it a little bit more eye-catching. And then I like to also just include my stars right at the end. In Photoshop, again, you have a bit more play here to maybe tweak the stars a little bit with the sliders. Yeah, I did just a little curve adjustment. You can control the smaller star and the brighter stars, and again maybe boost some colors of them. And that was it. That was then my final image here, just again in PixInsight. Fantastic. I like the story that the image tells. You know, the fiery red sulfur regions, some of the greens of the strong hydrogen, the interplay to create those oranges and yellows, and then finally this beautiful blues here. So thank you so much, guys, for the opportunity. And Eric, are we allowed to share the image on Astrobin? We'll give proper credit if doing so, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. I share any data someone's interested in, and the only thing I ever ask is just credit for the source of the image. Other than that, that's a very interesting interpretation. Not one that I would personally do, but I certainly understand how you came to that.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Jacques, for sharing that. That was an awesome image. I love the colors and the process flow on that. And when you brought the stars back in the end, that was really cool. And cool little touch with the contrast and the editing pin there. That's a pretty cool idea. All right, so the last person to present is going to be Paul Owen, and he had some pretty cool LRGB image, LRGB workflow. So thanks for joining us tonight, Paul.
Well, thanks very much for having me. And again, thank you, Eric, for supplying this data. It was a lot of fun to work with. And I, like I do with any picture, I fooled around with it a little bit to try to get it to where it is. So I'm going to just share my screen and get right into this. Okay. So basically, I'm still quite a student of this hobby. So first of all, my name is Paul Owen. I'm from Hampton, New Brunswick, Canada. So I'm on the east coast of Canada, and the skies here are not great at best, and because of that, it's nice to have some data that you can work with that's like this quality. So again, thank you for that. So I take a very minimalist approach to how I process an image. The thing that I concentrate on the most, or have been concentrating on the most now, before I get into the image too deeply, is trying to keep control of the star color, so that once I've got it to a certain point, then I can just take that star, the stars, remove them, put them back in when I'm done, and they might just need a tweak here or there. So that's kind of what I concentrated on in the beginning with this. So to start the image out was just basically taking the red, the blue, the green, typically combine them. Once I've got them combined, then I go to another process that a friend of mine actually who was on your channel, Jason Dane, had talked to me about, and it's called the repaired HSV. And what that does is it takes my stars that you can see that when I just combine the images together without a stretch, I lose a lot of color that's in them. So by using this technique, which basically just separates the hue and the saturation values and puts them out separate, and then recombines them. And what it does, it takes data from outside the star and fills inside the stars. So if you look at this star right here, for example, this one is this star. So after this technique, which is quite simple, all you do is you take your RGB image, go to the HSV, which is in script, and it's into the utilities, and it's just right down here called repair HSV separation. Click on it. It's a one button push, and it separates your image into 4 images. Then once you've got that done, then you just go back into channel combination, and instead of using RGB, you just use HSV, and basically it puts all these back together. It gives you 4 selections. The one that you don't just sort of fill in the blank with is this one, because you will get a V selection and you will get an unrepaired. So you always put the unrepaired in. You click on it, then it gives you an image like this. So then with this image, you can actually see the difference. I mean, in the color of the stars is absolutely amazing. There are some gold stars here that you see that I'm looking around for colored stars in this image and I can't find them, simply because I use this tool. So this tool is kind of what I would start and do to the image. It doesn't show up in the history, but so that's how I approach those stars. Now let me just get back to here. So once that's done, then I'll just go into the history of it, because I'll go through this quickly because I know it's been a lot of presenters. So then from there, I would go, of course, the channel combination. Between channel combination and noise reduction, that's where I would have done that process. And then I used noise exterminator. I find I was using the you know which one. I'm sorry for being tired. I did a show just before this one, so I'm a little tired. But in any event, I used to use the multi-scale transform to do all the noise reduction. But to be honest with you, I find that the noise exterminator works extremely well. So that's what I've been using. And it does have variations in it, so it tends to work well. From there, once I've done that, then I go, of course, to the calibration. So I just use a standard color calibration to calibrate the colors. And after that, then I actually use a mask stretch. And the reason I use a mask stretch is because, again, I want a more gentle approach to the stretch so that the stars aren't being too overly exposed. And I find for the type of methods that I use that it works best on that. So once I remove the stars from that, they stay nice and soft and the colors are preserved. After that, of course, I would do a histogram transformation, which is just another stretch. So I've got it stretched to a certain point. It was a little soft, so I would push it just a little bit more, and just to get a little bit more brightness. From there, I still had a little bit of green in the image itself. So of course, an SCNR is the tool that I use, and that solidified the green tint that was still there. It was slight, but it was enough that it had to be addressed. And then from that point, of course, eliminate the stars. So from there, I've got some really, really nice looking stars. They're all set aside. After the stars are removed, then I'll do 2 iterations of histogram equalization. Excuse me, one for larger scale, one for smaller scale. And it tends to do a nice job doing that. From there, I put the stars back in. Excuse me, I did some curves transformation to play around and get the colors that I was looking for. and got them. And I'll slide through these quickly once I've explained this. The image identification, all that was, I changed the image to RGB so that I could use my expression of HA-RGB combination, which is what I did. Then I added the HA in at the very end, and then just touched it up with some color. Now, excuse me. So basically, I'm just going to reverse with what we just talked about. So here up to the point where I used all of the mass stretch, the secondary stretch, and then I was at this point. This is where I removed the stars. And then from that point, excuse me, I did 2 iterations of local histogram equalization. First one and second one, they're very subtle, but as you know, with astro imaging, everything is processing, everything is subtle. If as Ron Breacher said, if you've seen the change, you've done too much. Then I added the stars back in. Another curves transformation to bring the colors to be as to what I thought were as natural as possible. And then change the identification to RGB so I could add in the hydrogen alpha that I worked on. And added that in, and then one final curves. And that's how I ended up with that final image. Now, the hydrogen alpha is what I used for, excuse me, a little bit of detail and a little bit of brightness. So I deconvolved this so that I got it as preserved as I could with the detail that was in the data. And so I did that under a typical workflow where you would start off with DBE and then work all the way through. I'm not telling you anything you probably don't already know on this because it's just a very straightforward work through. And then once I've got that done, excuse my voice, then it was just a matter of applying that HA data to the RGB data, and that's how I ended up with my image. And that's that.
Hey, Bob, Marcia wants to know how you added your HA into your RGB image.
Okay, so I just use this combination, this script, which is just, let's open it up, which is just this script here. And it's just one that actually that I got from somebody else. And all it does is just a pretty simple.
Paul, you're no longer sharing your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Okay. No. Screen. There we go. Okay, there we are. So yeah, so it's just a simple pixel math script that I'd use to combine the RGB data with the HA. And so of course I stripped the stars off of the hydrogen alpha because and then I put a star mask on the RGB data so that everything was protected that way, and then just added in the HA with this pixel math script.
When you say pixel math script, you're talking a pixel math formula?
Expression. Expression, my apologies.
Expression, okay.
Yeah. And that was it. That's how I produced this particular image. Okay, I'll just stop sharing.
Thank
here.
you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Paul. And thank you everyone for taking, the day really to come and share with us. So, it's one of my favorite parts about astro imaging is the chance to connect with people and talk, kind of nerd out on astro stuff. I learned a couple new processes today myself, and it's cool to go over things like noise exterminator, generalized hyperbolic stretch, and the 4x workflow. That was pretty cool. So really appreciate you guys, especially you guys coming from halfway across the world relative to us to be with us here today. So again, big thank you to all of you guys. I'm gonna quickly share my screen and go over some images that were submitted to us that weren't able to be presented tonight. And then Eric's going to close us out with his take on his data.
You
So
know, we're running a little long. If anyone wants to stay after we close the meeting, I'll go through my RGB processing. So
Which means, Eric, that, well, everybody's always free to go on YouTube, but are we going to continue to stream your explanation?
no, I think there's been a variety of presentations. You know, they all have their
Okay.
unique qualities. Why don't we let that stand? But if anyone wants to hang out afterwards, I'll go over my workflow, which is a little
And-
different.
And for
Happy
those
to
of
do it.
and for those of you who aren't in the room, we should explain that TAIC works on a Google Meet, and so all of these people were in a virtual meeting tonight, and we're in a Google Meet. And I think what Eric says is we can all hang around and stay here. Unfortunately, we're going to stop streaming, so this will be just like a little private session among us, right, Eric? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no particular secrets, but we are
Yeah.
running a little bit long, and I
Yeah.
think it's probably wise to do it that way.
We try to hold it at an hour and 15. I want to thank Paul and John, Jacques, Warwick, Alex, Paul, and especially Rory for putting all this work together, Molly for keeping us in line, getting everybody practiced up, Terry for presenting, for streaming it and getting the technical details all right. And Eric, you know, he provided the data. So yeah, congratulations. And all the people at the Astro Imaging channel who do all the work every week to bring a show. It's tough bringing you a show every Sunday night, even those nights when we'd rather be sleeping or taking a shower after a new moon weekend. So thanks for being here, everybody. Are we ready to go, Rory?
Yeah, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yeah, no, yeah, we got to watch that. So let's watch what Rory has put together.
Okay, so just quickly going over the submissions that weren't able to submit tonight. First, we have a submission from Jerry Bachman. Thank you, Jerry. Moving on to Mike Cuff. Pretty cool LRGB data there. And then this one's pretty cool from Phil Yates. Thank you, Phil. And I think this is the last one. Oh, that was from Paul, but Paul was here tonight. So sorry for putting that in twice, but that was a awesome way to take us out, Paul. Love the contrast of the blue stars, the natural star color against that LRGB data in the back. Actually, one more, Sebastian, and I believe that is it. Thank you for everyone again, and hope you all have a good night. Thank you.
We'll see you next week when Tim, I think, takes us through processing where he's putting some SHO information and making it pretty RGB. That's what I understand. So we'll see you. Take us away, Terry.